Let's go. Let's do it. Let's talk about it. Let's get out of here. The Spanish language doesn't have a word for let's, but it's obviously a super important word in English. We use it all the time. So there's a trick for translating this word into Spanish, and it uses one specific type of verb conjugation. I'm about to show you the trick, as well as give you a bunch of examples that use all the most common forms of let's for everyday conversations, plus a way you can keep practicing these yourself. Let's explore this. To start out, we need to look at why we use this word in English. What do we actually mean when we say, let's go, or let's do it? These phrases are considered imperatives. Now, when I learned that these were called imperatives, I was a bit confused. Like, imperatives are supposed to be orders, like go over there, or do the work, or talk about it. And yes, all of those phrases are the most common types of imperatives. You're giving an order and you're telling someone else what to do. We call these second-person imperatives. But what about when you want to tell a whole group of people what to do, and that group includes yourself? For example, you want to order a group of people to go over there along with you. Or you want a couple of people to do the work along with you. Or you want a friend to talk about it, but you also want to talk about it with them. In all of these cases where you're ordering someone to do something, but you also want to be included in the order, you'll use what we call the first-person plural imperative. So let's look at what these phrases would look like in English. Let's go over there. Let's do the work. Let's talk about it. And it's funny because the word let's literally comes from the phrase let us, as in allow us to do something. But in modern English, that's not what we mean by let's. Over time, the word let's has changed meaning. So now it's just considered a funny way of forming the first-person plural imperative. So pretty much any time you would use the word let's in English, you know to translate it as the first-person plural imperative in Spanish. So of course, this begs the question, how do you make this type of imperative in Spanish? The general rule is that these imperatives are based on the subjunctive, specifically the subjunctive form that's associated with nosotros. There are a couple of very important exceptions, and we'll get to those exceptions at the end of the video. But for now, let's look at this form of subjunctive and how they can help us form some of the most important imperatives in the whole Spanish language. First of all, let's try this one. Let's do the work. The verb we need here is hacer, and here's the conjugation table for hacer. What we need is the subjunctive form for the first-person group of people, or nosotros, and that's hagamos. And that's also exactly what this imperative is. So the Spanish sentence is hagamos el trabajo. We can use the same trick for almost any verb in Spanish. How about let's talk about this? The verb for talk is hablar. Here are the conjugations of hablar, and the subjunctive for the nosotros form is hablemos. So the Spanish sentence is hablemos de esto. Let's do a couple more. How about let's say something about this? The verb for say is decir. Now here are the conjugations of decir, and the subjunctive for the nosotros form is digamos. So the Spanish sentence is digamos algo acerca de esto. How about let's be friends? The nosotros subjunctive of ser is seamos. So this is seamos amigos. Next, let's see the movie. So the verb here is ver, and the nosotros subjunctive is veamos. So this is veamos la película. But this brings us to the exceptions to the rule. Well, this first one isn't entirely an exception because veamos does literally mean let's see. So yes, technically speaking, veamos is the nosotros imperative for ver. But actually, most of the time that you would use the phrase let's see in English, the Spanish translates to an idiom, and the idiom is haber. So let's just say as a random example that you and a friend are trying to figure out where your dog went. What you would say, maybe in English, is, let's see, I think it probably went in that direction. In Spanish, to say, let's see, you would actually say haber. But again, this isn't really an exception to the rule. This is just an idiom, because on a technical level, the first-person plural imperative of ver is veamos. But there is another verb that is a huge exception, the verb ir, which means to go. So let's say that you want to say, let's go. And we're going to try to follow the rules that we followed in all the other verbs. So we're going to go to the conjugation table, and we're going to find the subjunctive for the nosotros form. And here we find vayamos. The thing is, this word, vayamos, is a word that you're going to see used a lot in Spanish in normal subjunctive situations. And if you want to learn more about how to use subjunctives that are not imperatives, subscribe to this channel because soon I'm going to release some step-by-step instructions for how to master Spanish subjunctives in those situations. But the thing is, to say let's go in Spanish, you actually don't say vayamos. Instead, you say vamos. For example, let's go to the party is vamos a la fiesta. That's honestly really weird. A verb in Spanish whose let's form isn't the same as the nosotros subjunctive. Instead, this word, vamos, looks exactly like the indicative, the word that just means we go. So what's the reason for this exception? Well, there's a theory that this has to do with how common this verb is. So people say let's go all the time. And if you're going to say that all the time, the word vayamos is just way too long. So over time, vayamos as an imperative got shortened down to vamos. So it's really interesting that the most common first-person plural imperative is the exception to the rule. And actually, that's true of the second most common as well, which is the verb for let's leave, or irse. And this is going to get a little bit technical, but if you know anything about how pronominal verbs work, the nosotros imperative for irse should theoretically be vayámonos. That's based on vayamos plus nos. But vayámonos is quite a mouthful. Over time, this got shortened down to vámonos, which is missing a bunch of letters, but it's a lot easier to say than vayámonos. So vamos and vámonos are the two official exceptions to the rules that I've described in this video. For most verbs, to say let's do something, the imperative is based on the nosotros subjunctive. But for ir and irse, we use vamos and vámonos instead. Now it's time to practice this. We have a set of 30 flashcards that you can download and use for free. They all have full sentences with Spanish on one side and English on the other, and all of them start with let's, so that you can practice all the different things that you've seen in this video. So just to demonstrate, I have let's do that before tomorrow. So I'm expected to guess hagamos eso antes de mañana. And then let's talk about this. So hablemos de esto. Let's say something about this. So that would be digamos algo acerca de esto. So you can just use the link in the description of this video to download all 30 sentences and make these flashcards. And then for some fun ideas for how to use flashcards like these in an effective way to practice, check out our other videos about flashcards. Just subscribe to this channel for more grammar and study tips that'll get you speaking fluent Spanish faster than ever.